Veronica Dimas. And I will let them introduce themselves when they get up here. Our next panelist is Paulina Sosa. Hi, Paulina. You're welcome. And our final panelist, before I introduce our moderator, it is Estela De La Garza. She's my co-worker, my colleague. Hi, Estela. And it is my honor to introduce our moderator of this panel. She is not just a beacon in the community here in the city of Brownsville. She was with United Way for over 20 years, 27 years, if I'm not exact. And she is an active BCIC board member. Please welcome Ms. Tracy Wiggett.
Oh, I've got one. Yeah. Anybody need a mic?
Everybody has a mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Y'all check your mics, make sure they're on.
Check.
All right, Vero, let's start with you. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Who I am and what do I do? Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, first of all. My name is Veronica Dimas, and better known as Vero. I think for all of us that know around here, it's short for Veronica. I am the Farm Viability Director for Sustainable Food Center, an organization in Austin, Texas. I am their RGV representative and do multiple roles in the nonprofit sector, working with Big Green, another organization in Denver, Colorado, which we support grassroots organizations, smaller community organizations that we provide funding in a DAO component. And I do have formerly was the executive director for the Brownsville Wellness Coalition for over 10 years. So that is my baby, my proud moment, and that's how I started in the nonprofit sector. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Let's just keep going this way toward me.
Hello. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. It is great to be here. I will say my full name, Dr. Paulina Sosa Quintanilla. It's a bit of a mouthful, but everyone reminds me, say the doctor, because that's important. So really quickly, just a little bit about my work in the nonprofit world. I'm the proud founder and executive director for Latinx Voces, which is a national nonprofit based here in the Rio Grande Valley, proudly based here in the Rio Grande Valley, but working in health equity, working to showcase the voices of the Latino community in health and in workforce development around the country. Also, just a little side note to say that I recently got my doctorate in public health informatics this past year from Hopkins, and so it's great to bring that degree back here to my roots in Brownsville, Texas. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to this exciting conversation.
I was going to say good morning, but it's not. Feels like morning. But my name is Estela De La Garza. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at UTRGV. I have been working with nonprofits for about 18 years now. When I began at UTBTSC at our Center for Civic Engagement and transitioned to UT Brownsville, and then of course now UTRGV. And so working really, really closely with the nonprofit community in finding partnerships on campus, working really closely with faculty in getting them, I would say, somewhat trained in best practices for community engaged work so that we're doing things in mutual benefit, that they're reciprocal, and really giving our students those opportunities in the community to give back, to really connect what they're learning in the classroom out in the community. Thank you for having us.
So each of these ladies represents sort of a different entry point into community impact. At the end with Vero, we've got food systems, and with Estela, we have education, and we have health with you, Paulina. So in 1 minute, and I'm going to be timing you, so in 1 minute, how does your organization contribute to both community well-being and something we don't often think about for nonprofits, but economic opportunity? And let's start with you, Vero.
Yeah, thank you. 1 minute is a big challenge for me, as some of you know, right? If I have 1 minute, that's
Get to it.
Get to it, girl. Here we go. So the answer to your question is through Sustainable Food Center, our work goes around, it's it overlaps. So we are supporting farmers to make sure that the farmers stay in the business of farming, because we are making sure that we are food stable in this country, not only in this country of Texas and in this country of the United States, right? So specifically, we've been working, giving technical support and technical assistance, both through funding and collaborations through community partners, and state funding too, through HHSC and other, such as the Double Up Bucks. So we work with farmers markets and folks that are doing the work of food and making sure that they stay in the business of farming and providing food to our tables, and making sure that they are doing it in an equitable way that supports also their families, because we can get into that later. But a lot of these folks, it's really important to support them with their health care too, to make sure that they stay healthy and that they are getting the services that they need, so that they can continue the work to bring food to my table and to your table.
Paulina, how about you?
And I'm sorry, so the question was how health equity impacts economic development, was that right?
Yes, how does it impact both community well-being and economic opportunity?
Okay, absolutely. So I don't know if any of us here know about the social determinants of health. I won't get all public healthy on y'all, but just to say that every aspect of our life plays a role in our wellness, right? So our health impacts directly whether we can go to our job, right? So if we have a loved one that is sick, then we need to either take care of them, or we need to make sure that they can access their job, right? So all of this plays a very direct role in how health impacts our well-being as individuals, as families, how it impacts our loved ones, but more importantly, how it impacts our community. So the more we increase the health of our community, then the more we can increase the economic opportunity in our community. So it's all very tied together, and that's a little bit of what the social determinants of health say. Everything impacts each other, and that's how we're all interconnected.
So at the university, a lot of the things that we work on is really engaging our students and making sure that our students in engaging in these experiences are not only helping the community, working alongside the community organizations, but really building on skill sets. So we want our students to be learning skills like working with others, communication, things that are going to come in through the pipeline of workforce development and education. We want them to be better prepared. This is why we engage them in community engaged work like service learning, internships, clinicals. It's really a way to better prepare them. I always tell students, we don't want you leaving without knowing how to work with someone else, how to really think critically about how to think outside the box when an issue arises, right? We do this through actually getting our hands dirty, being out in the community, working alongside our partners, and hopefully your future employers.
I'm going to stick with you, Estela, for this next one, since you've kind of warmed up on it. You've built longstanding partnerships across the region. So what separates a meaningful university community partnership from one that's just window dressing or transactional?
Yeah, it's easy to get into that transactional mode right away, right? Because we want something, we want to get something done, and let's check off the box. So I can think of a transaction, at least in the university setting where I'm working with students. Maybe that's a day of service. That's still one time, right? We just want to go in and out, just like we would be at a convenience store, in and out. Go in and get in those hours, do the service, that's good enough. It isn't good enough, right? If I'm going to start with that transactional relationship, I'm really going to be wanting to, what can we do in the long term? How can we continue to sustain that relationship? So maybe we start with that transaction, that really quick one and done, but the goal is ultimately to really co-create these experiences. This is something that I work really closely with our faculty members, right, in thinking, how are we making sure that this partnership is going to go beyond the semester, right? We think in semesters at the university, so what about next semester and the following? You know, we want something that works really, really well for more than the one semester. I think that's important, that it is co-created, that we are seeing our partners as co-educators. That's going to be really important. And so that's where we move from that transaction of that one day to really building a long-term relationship.
Great. Paulina, you approach impact through health, equity, and data. So how does improving health outcomes translate into economic mobility and stronger communities? You touched a little bit on that, but this is a good opportunity for a deeper dive.
Absolutely. So yeah, just to continue the thread that I pulled already, the notion that a healthier community has a direct impact on a stronger and an increased economic opportunity in the community really ties together. And so how do we connect the two? And I'm going to touch a little bit on what Estela mentioned, the importance of partnership and the importance of bringing different sectors into the room. And we're really proud to say that we are proud partners of both of the amazing panelists here on the stage and many of you in the room. And I think that's another piece in increasing the health access and health equity in our community, because we cannot do it alone. I believe one of the previous panelists mentioned that. So in the business community, this idea that we cannot do it alone, it's the same thing for nonprofits, it's the same thing for our work, and it's the same thing for Latinx voices in working to increase and address the health needs of our community. And as our name implies, we work very directly with Latino and Spanish-speaking communities, but all communities, the stronger and the healthier we all are, then the more we can access different opportunities, the more we can grow together. And I think we're seeing a really beautiful example of that here in Brownsville. We know that there is an increase of healthy opportunities. We have our trails, we have the farmers market, we have all of these new health opportunities that I didn't have when I grew up in Brownsville. And we can already see a very clear correlation with the increase in economic development, the increase in certain small businesses that were in existence in the community in that time. So there's a very clear correlation, and it's exciting to see how that merges together and how we can continue to build moving forward together.
Because I think that, can I add to that? It's collaborative, not competitive, right? I think that's what you're talking about.
Now it's your turn, Vero. Sorry, we've known each other a long time. We can tease. So food access and sustainability aren't always seen as economic drivers. I mean, there may be people here who are thinking, what does this have to do with me? I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a small business person. So how do those things fuel entrepreneurship and long-term community resilience?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that food systems are the fuel to entrepreneurship, especially when we're talking restaurant industry or a farmer's market or a farm stand or anything like that. It's important to understand that we all need food. Even in food pantries, we talk about maybe Good Neighbors Settlement House and the need that we have to fill. So it's a driven fact. Somebody has to grow that food, somebody has to provide that food and bring it into the restaurant, whether it's a Cisco or if it's a local grower in the area. So I think it's important to recognize that at the end of the day, it's very much needed in order for all of us, for humanity to exist. So it fuels into that entrepreneurship. I like to support local and making sure that we advocate to support these local farmers, because they are the ones that are fueling our industry and entrepreneurship here locally, right? Yes, is it beautiful that we can get these food companies bring tomatoes immediately in 24 hours from one day to the other, but there's a lot of movement right now, and it's a lot of trend. I think there is now more exposure of these acts in the school districts, in restaurants, and people are looking for that experience, to experience the tomatoes or the grapefruits that were grown in Bayview, right? So it's more of an experience that provides that entrepreneurship too, and continues to fuel that.
Love that. So this is about purpose and impact. It's right up there on the big screen, so let's get to impact. What does a nonprofit built for impact look like in the space that you work in? And there's a second part, so listen carefully. How do you balance mission with sustainability in an age of really uncertain funding opportunities? Vero, you want to go ahead since you're warmed up?
Yes, I would love to. I have been in this industry for over 20 years, and I can definitely attest to the roller coaster of funding and the stability of a nonprofit. I always say there has to be a certain person and humans that go into the working industry and nonprofits. You lead with passion and passion to serve. I posed this question to my team once: is what do you think the world would look like if nonprofits didn't exist? And so the response were the connection between government agencies and community there would be a gap, because there's this trust industry that the nonprofit brings to the table. So I think in the idea of what the impact is making in our community, in the RGV, there's resources available in these times that we live in. And it's not just right now. I want to say that this roller coaster of politics and the way we are living comes and goes, but I think it's more present now because of social media and the internet and being exposed, having it easily accessible to us to see and to understand. It's making us more aware of why it is important for us to support the nonprofit industry. Very competitive. I love all my nonprofit friends that I think we're always tapping into the same resources in there, but there is enough for everyone. There is enough for all of us to make an impact, whether it's Latinx Voices or UTRGV or Sustainable Food Center or United Ways. There is enough for all of us to be able to make that impact.
Great. Paulina, you want to take a crack at it?
Sure. So I'm going to bounce off of what Vero mentioned. I'll go ahead and start with the importance of collaboration, which keeping that thread going. Impact really comes back to the power of our relationships with each other. And actually, we're in the middle of a series that's talking just about this right now. How do we build impact, and how do we make sure that we see true impact in the community, and how do we measure impact, touching on the data piece? And so one of the biggest things that we see is, one, the importance of collaboration, and two, the importance of stories, the importance of building trust with our community, building trust with our partners, building trust with the families that we serve, right? Because as a nonprofit, as Vero mentioned, we are here to serve, and we are here to serve with passion. I can tell you, when I started Latinx Voices about 5 years ago, I didn't know the roller coaster I was about to enter, and man, has it been a roller coaster. It's been a lot of prayer, and it's been a lot of friends, it's been a lot of support, but the impact that we see working with families, the impact that we see in building these partnerships, that's what makes the wheels keep going. That's what makes it worth it. So even those sleepless nights, all of those tears that we cry when we're applying for those grants, it's worth it because we know that it has a true impact on the families that we are here to serve. And the beautiful thing is that the passion continues. Our passion and our love to serve the community and to think creatively and innovatively in times and uncertain times like today, like COVID, like other times, right? I'm sure many of us can remember, whether you are a small business owner or a nonprofit founder, you remember times where the economy wasn't always stable. And so how do you have to think out of the box? And that is what being a nonprofit founder has been like for us. It's been, how do we get creative? How do we think innovatively? How do we work together? Even though we're tapping into the same service, into the same pot of money, how can we work together to make sure that we're able to increase the impact together instead of in competition? So that's just a little bit. Happy to answer more.
So Estela, for you, it's different. You don't have to play the nonprofit Hunger Games like everybody else does, right? So your point of view on this is probably pretty dramatically different from the other two panelists.
A little bit, but I understand because I hear the stories, right, from our nonprofit partners. But, within our Office of Community Engagement, we do have our Nonprofit Resource Center. And so that resource center is specifically there to help our nonprofits, whether they're startups right at the very beginning or just having this idea, or building capacity within that nonprofit. So I think it's important, right? Vero, Paulina already mentioned, right, about being mission driven is going to be important. Making sure that data plays a role in that. making sure that we are just diversifying and understanding the importance of diversifying where we're getting our funding. These are things that some of our workshops that we host within the NRC, talk about. How the art of storytelling, all of these different things, right? At the end of the day, right, we really want to make sure that we are showcasing these activities and opportunities for our nonprofits so that they can think differently, so that we are not in, oh, we lost funding and what now because I put all of my eggs in this basket and now I don't have that available. And so in true spirit of collaboration and partnership, making sure that we are working together as nonprofits. A lot of the times, I'm not the nonprofit expert in our office. We have Beverly, but that a lot of the times we have a brand new, future nonprofit, and we're like, wait, but is there someone else doing that? Is there someone you can partner with that is already doing that work that you won't be in competition with because the funding is limited? And so those are the types of things that we're thinking about and seeing how can we make sure that our nonprofit community feels supported, that we're offering opportunities that are meaningful. And then also I think just a little bit off, but kind of in the nonprofit world, is making sure that we see our nonprofits, right? They are nonprofit businesses. They are businesses, right? And so we need to think like businesses. We don't just rely on one funding source as a for-profit business. And so we really need to rethink, plan, and just like one of the panelists earlier said, right, have a business plan in place. We need those things.
Thank you for that. I was hoping somebody would mention that nonprofits are businesses, so we don't often think about that. It's a business who's mission-driven and does not exist to return profit to a shareholder. It exists to provide impact to a community. I love that partnership and collaboration have been such a big theme running through all of your answers. And I wonder, starting with you, Paulina, can you share a partnership that led to some pretty significant impact? And what was it that made it work? What was the secret sauce?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one because we're built on the power of partnership. I'll go ahead and mention one that has sustained us for the last 3 years. Many of you may have came to our summit last year, so that's a slight shout out to BCIC. So that was a beautiful example of partnership coming to life. But I'm going to talk a little bit about another nonprofit partner, Compassion and Choices. They have been a powerful national partner of us and have invested into the work that we do on a national and on a regional basis for 3 years. And we're grateful for that partnership. And what Compassion and Choices focuses on end-of-life planning. It's a tough topic, especially in the Latino community. But the importance of navigating these conversations, right? And the importance of bringing together trainings and workshops and family events for families locally, regionally, and nationally has been very clear from this partnership. So they have invested in us being able to put together national webinars, local trainings, and seeing how that investment, seeing how that partnership has just blossomed into other types of ideas, other types of programs and events. Not only have they supported us, but we have supported them as well. We're thinking about this idea of mission-driven, right? We're both mission-driven, and we're finding a very common way to work together. And that way to work together is to provide education of families. And so that, again, just a powerful testament to not only the power of being mission-driven and the power of passion with the people that we work with, but the importance of sustainability in those partnerships. And like I said, I can mention so many more. We've very proudly partnered with Nonprofit Resource Center, BCIC, Sustainable Food Center, many of you in the room. Partnerships is, in many ways, our bloodline. That is how we stay alive. So I can go on and on all day about the power of partnerships and how that's played a huge role in the impact we have in the community together, but I'll highlight that specific one.
All right, Vero, how about some partnerships that you've been engaged in? What made it work?
Well, I will talk about our story, Tracy, so that we could highlight that since we're all both up here. COVID time, right? We realized that speaking about food and how it fuels the community, at that time we were sitting in our office being told that we needed to go home like everyone else and we needed to stay indoors. So what were we going to do about food, right? So I picked up the phone and I called my friend Tracy here and said, Tracy, we have a problem. There's no food in Brownsville. The food bank needs help. How do we support the food bank while Libby is over there trying to serve 3 large counties to be able to service food? So I have this thing that I pick up the phone and I knew that I was going to call Tracy and that I was going to, take a gamble and say, and Tracy at that time was at United Way, and she could just say no. Sorry, Vero, I'm not available. But she's like, tell me more. What is going on? What is the problem? How are we filling this gap? So we had the conversations. We brought the right people to the table and started a project and started a very important project during COVID time. That time, 1 year, and I only have stats because I'm the ones that I have fresh in my mind. 1 year, the first year of COVID, we gave out 95,000 bags of produce every Friday at Lopez High School or Bisero Middle School and at the event center. 95,000 bags is a lot, y'all. It was very, very important. There was people lined up since the night before waiting for food. So that's one of my proudest moments because Brownsville Wellness Coalition at that time was not in the business of food distribution. Tracy was not in the business of food distribution nor United Way. So we were faced with a unique situation that we needed to fill a gap rapidly. It was quick, right? So we became very creative, I will say, by buying landscape trailers and loading food in the back of landscape trailers and making sure that people were being fed in Brownsville. So I think that is the important thing to highlight here, is you pick up the phone, you have your traditional conversations like humans, right? We talked, and the worst thing, she could have told me no, and I would have said, okay, then let's move on to the next friend, or let's move on to the next person to be able to, or to the next organization that's going to help us. And from there, United Way and Brownsville Wellness Coalition was able to build other community partners that stepped in and stepped up to the plate to be able to support that. So that's one of my proudest moments in the nonprofit sector, but I will also say that collaboration is huge. Again, it's collaboration, it's not competitive. It's where we do not work in silos in the RGV. We all have maybe sometimes duplicating work, but the work is up and down the valley, and we need to continue supporting that. And that makes the impact at the end of the day. That makes the impact in the community and up and down the valley.
I just want to pop in with a little further explanation of how that United Against Hunger worked. We also knew that our restaurant partners were basically closed, and so their servers didn't have work. Well, who knows how to get food to people quickly and efficiently? And so we partnered with an organization out of Dallas that gave us an app that allowed us to have restaurant workers sign up for shifts with us to help get food out to people. And that went on for over a year. So it gave the restaurant workers an income that we were able to pay them, but it also introduced amazing efficiencies at our pantries and food distribution sites because these people know how to hustle. And so I think that was a really fun is not a word I guess I should use as pertains to COVID, but it was a creative and exciting way of connecting workers with work and people with food all at the same time.
What was the name of that app? It was a unique name that it had, right?
It was, okay, listen carefully, and I hope I don't lisp. Get Shift Done.
That was the name of the app. And so that also, I think, was the start and the beginning of us understanding technology and how important it was to be able to move things quickly and get things done. So yeah, I had forgotten about that. Good
We
point.
actually got a lot of national attention for that because it was just kind of one of those obvious solutions that was right there, but sometimes we don't think about, well, how can we translate a piece of, or an app that's used to schedule restaurant workers into scheduling people to work at nonprofits or food distribution sites. So it's fun to think back on that. Again, fun and COVID should not go together, but it was great to get to see a partnership working robustly and effectively. Estelle, I don't know, are you interested in this question, or would you like to move on to?
Yeah, I can definitely
All
tackle
right.
that a little differently this time.
Okay.
But at the university level, at least, I love how Vero mentioned silos, right? And making sure that we're not working in silos. I think one of the biggest partnerships within my office is a partnership specifically getting students out in the community, right? Connecting classrooms to the community, if we'd say that. And that's through our service learning program. And so that isn't something that's done out of one office. The Office of Community Engagement exists, our Office of Engaged Scholarship and Learning, and then also our Center for Teaching Excellence. And so these are three key partners in making sure that, right, we're getting, and right, of course, through the Office of Community Engagement, our Nonprofit Resource Center. And so we look at it as a tiered support system for making sure that community engaged work can work well in all of those audiences. And so we want to support, right, our nonprofits in building capacity, of providing them the opportunity to have a volunteer management system, right, that we can help train, that we can provide engagement zone specialists to add a need if you're a team of one, and so that there is some visibility on campus when it comes to your needs as a nonprofit. With our faculty, right, and providing that training and support so that they understand best practices of community engaged work and that they aren't doing the transactional work. And then that our students are feeling that support too, right, in knowing also, how do I use that engagement zone volunteer system? How do I sign up for something and make sure that I'm tracking the engagement so that when the Office of Community Engagement is looking at what is happening across the valley with our nonprofits, where our students are involved, that there is that work. We rely so much on collaboration and partnerships on and off campus. We rely on our nonprofits to even communicate to students, hey, do you know about Engagement Zone? Do you know that you can get a volunteer cord by tracking all of these hours? We rely on our faculty members, right, that are also engaging their students and making sure that we're doing that tracking. So that partnership is big, but it really touches all of our RGV community. And so I like to say, right, when we don't work in those silos, when we are working with all the different constituents, when a partner feels comfortable enough to say, hey, Estela, this isn't working because they're not doing service learning the way I'm used to service learning working, that's important to me. It's important that I get calls when things aren't working well, and especially when they are working well, but I want to hear right away, right, when things aren't working well. And so that, because if one of those audience members is not feeling supported, then everyone, isn't supported.
Awesome. So, Vero, what do you think are the biggest disconnects between nonprofits and businesses, small or large?
This is a great question. I think whether you're a small business or a large business, it's important to understand what benefits both collaborations, right, coming from the nonprofit sector and the business component. I will talk today about the farmers market. I think it's such a great space to launch a product or an item or an exotic fruit, or talk about dragon fruits, or talk about coffee. I don't know if some of you know, but 7th and Park, I can go down the list and talk about all the highlights and the great products that have my proud children, I call them my teenagers, all grown up, because they started at the farmer's market, right? There was an opportunity to be able to come to a farmer's market and build their product. And so from there, we've heard these success stories. It's important to understand how we can support each other. Now, those folks that are grown-up teenagers, guess what? So they're coming back to support the nonprofits. They are now they're a part of the list of our funders, and they host events for nonprofits. They will run clothing drives for us. They will do different activities to be able to support the nonprofit, because they also remember that there was an opportunity for them, given to them at one point, to be able to scale up and do their businesses. So that for me is quite important when we work together, and understanding that we can, in the food system, when we talk about food systems, right, we and nonprofits and businesses, and I said that the food is the drive of the entrepreneurship. We can build food systems, but we got to build them together. We can't build them for them. We got to build them with the community. So in that aspect, I think reminding us how we work together, it brings warmth to my heart.
Paulina, same question?
Okay, can you remind me
Sure.
the question?
What do you think are the biggest disconnects between your nonprofit and businesses?
Yeah, this is a good question and a little bit of a loaded question, right? I think, kind of touching on the idea of silos, many people assume that nonprofits and small businesses or even companies, large companies, don't mesh, right? Because nonprofits have a very different type of business model. They're more about the community. Businesses are not as much. But I think this is proof that that's not true, right? That nonprofits and small business owners very much work together. And I know that there's a few small businesses in the room that we work very closely together with, because their business model is actually mission driven as well. And, I think the beauty here is in the opportunity of finding alliances that are non-traditional. And y'all mentioned COVID. One of the collateral benefits, as we like to say, from such a crazy emergency like COVID was the beauty of breaking down those silos that are normally existent in community impact. And one of those was working with your non-traditional health partners, which included companies, small businesses, artists, food. So there's a whole bunch of different sectors that are probably in the room today, and I could very easily talk with each and every one of you to say how we could work together to work for the benefit of the community. And so while there is still, unfortunately, there is still a bridge that needs to be built between certain companies, I think we're very much working toward a beautiful way of collaboration with small businesses, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can work with even the larger companies as we move forward.
How about from the university perspective?
I would say I'll go back again, right, in the realization of that nonprofit business and the for-profit business, and making sure that we know that there is so much alignment, right? When we're looking at businesses, for-profit businesses, right, we're thinking about, just like earlier, thinking about the market, right? Our non-for-profit businesses are thinking about what are the needs in the community and how do we address those needs, right? Same thing, needs market. And so we want to make sure that, that everyone understands that together, right, so that we can better support. Some of us, right, especially here, a lot of our entrepreneurs, we can definitely support some of the nonprofit organizations. We see that in the big businesses, there's a corporate model where you can go and support the community, right? We have like Kohl's Cares, HEB, corporate community wants to go out and address, right? Sometimes it is that transaction, right? But how can we make sure that we're connecting and saying, like, how can we better support in the long term?
Love that. Okay, so this is going to have to be kind of lightning round because we're down to just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to ask for you to just hit on your point and we'll move on. What is the one biggest barrier that consistently limits nonprofit impact in our region? Vero, go.
Funding.
Funding.
Took mine. I was going to say funding. I'll go ahead and say access, information, sometimes not knowing where to go.
Okay.
I'll be a little bit longer. Really making sure that we're focusing on that leadership development component for our nonprofits. Sometimes we put that off to the side because, oh, I'm too busy, I have this. But when you're not looking at developing yourself as a nonprofit leader, if you're not looking at developing your board, things can fall apart really easily. And so I think making sure that we put those as priorities is really important.
Okay, I'm going to do a time check here because my watch shows that we are just at our limit. Okay, well then just to offer you the opportunity, we could take 1 or 2 questions if anybody has one. Hearing none, we are concluded. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Can we please big a big round of applause to these amazing panelists? And one more to this amazing moderator, Dr. Tracy. Oigan, más fuerte, ¿qué pasó? Now we're gonna take a quick group picture. If you all can help me looking at this camera right here. Yes.